Hello, it's Maria Athanasopoulos, the Active Ageing Officer at Canterbury Bankstown Council. I acknowledge that this podcast is being recorded on Darug country. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia, and I pay my respect to their elders past and present and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. My parents migrated to Australia because they wanted a better life for themselves and the family they were planning to have. I thank the traditional custodians for protecting the land and the waters. I also would like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the Darug and Eora Nations peoples whose land I work on and live on. I am committed to honouring their cultural heritage and the contribution they make to this city.
Hi, I'm James, local resident of Canterbury Bankstown.
And I'm Anna, Community Development Worker in Canterbury Bankstown.
Canterbury Bankstown is rich in diversity, from the languages spoken, countries of birth, journeys to CBCity, along with the various identities, abilities, faiths practiced, achievements and multi-generations.
Together, we'll be interviewing a range of community members from Canterbury Bankstown. We'll be amplifying diverse voices from across the CBCity to give you an insight into other cultures. Together, we're working to create a great CBCity where we all belong, feel welcome, safe and embrace our differences. This is Voices of CBCity. Hi everyone, today we have with us Julie Magill. Julie's grown up and continues to live in Bankstown. Julie works with Diversity and Disability Alliance, where she's a peer researcher and facilitator with the Culturally and Linguistically Diverse Peer Cafe, the Women's Group and Eastern Suburbs Peer Cafe. She is very passionate about becoming an advocate for changing attitudes, perceptions, education and inclusion in the disability space and community. Julie would like to see people with disability from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds to feel respected, valued, connected and included within their local communities. Julie loves watching sports such as basketball, especially the Sydney Kings. She likes watching cricket, AFL, plays bocce, cricket and trivia, and Julie loves to read. Thanks for joining us today, Julie.
Thank you very much for having me.
So Julie, you were born in Bankstown, is that right? Or in the area?
I was born in Sydney and I grew up in Bankstown.
So tell me about your the first home where you grew up in. Who was living in that home?
I was put up for adoption at birth. So I was temporary fostered by an Australian family and they've always lived in Bankstown. So that's where I grew up. My first home was in an old fibro house, 3 or 4 bedroom on a busy street, Stacey Street, of course.
Stacey, yeah.
And now I'm still living there. Recently, back in 2004-05, my sister and I knocked down and rebuilt, and we're still living in Stacey Street today, still in Bankstown.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you would have seen this area develop quite a lot over the years.
Yes, most definitely. So, yeah.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, I can always remember that Bankstown was a white Anglo-Saxon community. So it wasn't your culturally diverse communities as it is today.
Yeah.
So it was very different back in the early 70s, early to mid 70s, yeah.
Would you say that parts of Stacey Street have become a part of your identity now?
Yes,
Yeah.
most definitely. Probably now that we're in a Cow community, I'm definitely feel more connected and I feel comfortable within my own skin, if that makes sense. Because back then it was, I was coming to terms with my identity. I had a disability, woman of colour, race, all those sorts of things, which still exist today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Julie, can we talk a little bit about your discovering about the adoption or your natural parents and that that journey that you went through?
Yeah, it was. I guess it was pretty hard back then because back in the 70s, you've got to remember too, it was sort of like European, white English. My mum was Fiji. She was from Fiji, so she came to Australia from Queensland. She lived in Queensland at the time. There was a big Fijian community in mid-north Queensland. That's where she lived, and she came down to Sydney to have me.
Mm-hmm.
And my father, my birth father, was from England, so he at the time they weren't married. They were just here on a working holiday.
Mm-hmm.
So and they were both school teachers.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Mm. And were your adoptive parents happy to share this story with you from an early age?
I think it was sort of, those conversations were difficult. I found that difficult to have that conversation growing up because I do recall when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I would ask my foster mum these questions: or why am I different? Why am I, why am I dark? Those sorts of questions. So I do remember there were times where, growing up as a child, there was a lot of racism as well, so which I like to share. So I'll give two examples. So when I was a baby, I remember one of my white aunties, that was my foster mum's sister. She one of her comments was, "Oh, I wonder if Julie will be able to speak English when she grows up."
Yeah, that's a sign of the times, isn't it?
That one, and one that really stands out for me is I had a photo with my cousin. I was black, he was white, and her response was, "Oh, isn't that disgusting?"
The auntie?
The auntie. So times have changed now, but sometimes there is still that white, black, that type of thing.
Did that have an impact on your relationship together?
Beg pardon?
Did that have an impact on your relationship with your auntie?
No, it didn't. It didn't. I guess I had a lot of respect for my aunties and uncles back then. You've got to remember too that they were probably in their 50s or 60s, but they were also from the Depression era back in 1920s, 30s. So back then, it was, I can understand why they would ask those questions, but for me as a child growing up, I think, well, that's a bit.
Yeah.
But today you wouldn't be asking those questions today anyway.
Yeah. Did you see that auntie develop in her understanding of cultural issues, or?
Probably not. Because as I said, they were
A different era.
And which I still to this day have a lot of respect for people living in that era, because I wouldn't know what it's like to live in, have, asking the questions. I don't mind people asking me those sorts of questions, but I guess in the 21st century, 2024, nearly 25, we're still sort of going back into that type of, why are you here, that type of thing.
Yeah. So you in yourself came to terms with who this auntie was, what she'd been through, what generation she was part of, and had that kind of appreciation and acceptance of who she was, where she was coming from, but it must have been kind of hurtful too as a kid to be getting this from a family member, let alone stepping outside of your front yard.
Yeah, I mean that was difficult because most of my aunties and uncles were white Anglo-Saxon. It was very hard. The Fijian community or connections, I've got a close friend who's Fijian, and we connect over the phone, messenger, that type of stuff every day. And so, we're round about the same age, so she feels that burden as well.
Yeah. And Julie, what was that like? Like, at what point did you start to discover more about your Fijian cultural heritage and start to discover that community in itself?
Probably when I was about 11, 10 or 11. My foster mum and my sister, they took me back to Fiji for a holiday.
Okay.
We went for like 2 weeks, had a holiday, discover who my ancestry was. It was actually quite heartwarming to go back because knowing that, this is a really cool place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your sibling, is she also of an Anglo background?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what about today as far as your connections with the Fijian community, the Fijian culture?
Because I don't speak the language, what's really funny is that when I see people in the shopping centre, Fijian heritage, they always speak the Fijian language to me, and I wouldn't have a clue what they're talking about. So the only couple of words that I know is Bula Vanaka, and Morde is to say goodbye. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do recall only just recently, a couple of months ago, that my friend, there was a whole group of us that we went to the Disability Expo, and there were people all around, and we were just having lunch, and there was this elderly person, white, said it was talking Fijian to me, and I said to my friend, she said to me, is that person talking to you or me? Well, we both laughed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's really interesting, Julie.
Yeah.
Because if I'm half Filipino, so I don't know how to speak Tagalog either, and sometimes I feel like that creates quite of a barrier, with other people of the same culture. Do you feel like you've ever had any barriers not being able to speak Fijian with those people, or what has been your experience, I suppose?
Probably not having to speak the language. I find I would have liked to have learned the language to connect with people like that, but I found that they would come up to you anyway and just say hello. Questions I would ask, what's wrong with your leg, that type of thing. Yeah. Yeah, about my disability and probably connections. Yeah, I mean they're also friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So still on the thread of culture, and appreciating that you're in a schoolyard in the 1970s and the 1980s. How did you? What were your experiences with racism in the schoolyard, on the streets of Bankstown back then?
I actually went to a school for people with disability, so Broderick House in Lakemba. So and that was with people with lived experience of disability. So I've kept in contact with some of those people where, we're really close friends. Going back, it was different because, as I said, I think they were all from some friends that I had were from cultural backgrounds as well, and in a white Anglo-Saxon area or LGA at the time, we weren't. But I mean, it didn't bother us.
Yeah.
So I mean, there was a touch of racism still there, lingering.
Yeah.
Out there.
Yeah.
So I mean, even when I leave my house, sometimes I feel sometimes once I walk out the door, I know I used to have a thing in my head, my mind thinking, once I walk out there, then I'm going to be judged all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That must have been pretty difficult.
It was, but I've learned in the last couple of years to stand up and amplify my voice so that, it's not okay anymore to say stuff like that. Yeah.
And has that been a bit of a journey for you as far as finding that confidence, finding that voice over the years, compared to when you were a child and maybe, I don't know, I'm assuming maybe a little bit more timid as a kid than now, being in arenas where that's why you're there, actually, to say what you think and to have a voice for people with disability.
Yeah, definitely. I think even when I was working in the government agency, federal government space or government space, that was really difficult. That was a really difficult time for me too, because it wasn't an inclusive workplace to start with, and I had experienced a lot of exploitation and bullying and discrimination, unfairly treated, that sort of thing. So once the Royal Commission came in, and I had that chance to share my story, yes, it was very, very painful, because I had to wind back the clock at least over 20, 25, 26, 27 years of bullying, discrimination, exploitation in the workplace. So that and that's when I started to learn to stand up for myself and have that confidence to share that story, because I felt a couple of times where I would have liked to have had that opportunity back in the 90s when I first started work. I wrote back to the commission a couple of times previously and said, well, the recommendations, these are the recommendations that you should have had, and I would have liked to have seen a Royal Commission back then. I didn't realise, for me, I didn't realise how bad the exploitation in workplace bullying was until after I left that organisation. And it was like, oh, hang on a second, and I've just felt this is not okay anymore. That's when, once I started sharing my story with the commission, with the Disability Royal Commission, and recommendations that I made to them that I recommended at the time, then that's when I felt that this has to stop. This is not right. And that's when I found my feet. And this is probably leading up to when I was starting to volunteer with council as well.
So what year was the Royal Disability Commission?
I think that was round about, might have been just after COVID.
Okay.
22, I think it started around about 21, 22. So it was during the COVID years, and then there was about three or 4 years.
That's very admirable, Julie.
People telling their sharing their stories via video, You can have a one-on-one consultation, or you could have a sort of like a share your story, like with a. I actually I had a advocate, a Disability Royal Commission advocate, that spoke on my behalf at the time when I was telling her my story, sharing my story, and that's how that began. Yeah.
Is there any way that it's sort of like, having lived through this experience, and the revelations that you would have come across during that time, is there any way that it sort of guides your life moving forward now?
Yes, I think there's still that the community with a disability, people with disability, lived experience with disability. There are so many types of disabilities. It's not just physical. There's intellectual, psychosocial. I've got a psychosocial chronic depression and anxiety disorder, as well as on top of intellectual disability, but also I only just found out recently that last month that I had a MRI brain scan, and what the image showed is that half my left side of my brain, which controls my right side of my body, that was missing.
Wow.
So
That's high half.
that was, yes, from an acute stroke at birth, not realizing that I had a stroke.
What was like your reaction to that?
It's like, I had to. My sister and I came. My sister went into the consultation, the appointment with me. We sort of started making jokes. I know that sounds a bit, but my neurologist was trying to be serious, and one of the questions my sister asked me was, at the time, she said, "Oh, do you feel lightheaded now?" So it was sort of, we'll try not to joke about it, but sometimes I think I wrote, this is also when I started writing. I do a lot of creative writing, so I started writing a journal. So one of my journal entries was that I mentioned at the time was I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, because that was over. You got to remember, the important thing to remember here is that there was no CT or MRI scan machines back in the day.
Yeah.
So when I was diagnosed back in the 70s, early 70s, 73, I was only diagnosed with the cerebral palsy. So, that, I had that in my entire life without even knowing that I had that. And my sister and I were both discussing it or talking about it a couple of times, and she said, and we both agreed and said that explains a lot. The trauma and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. And also going back to that time and getting diagnosis and that change in language as well around issues with disability. Do you want to talk a bit about that too?
Yeah, I will mention that now that you've asked that question, because the language that was used up in that time was probably for inappropriate. Not realising. I used to go to what they called the Cerebral Palsy Alliance, but it was formerly known as the Spastic Centre of New South Wales. That was formerly what it was known as.
Yeah.
And up until the 70s, or even in the 2000s, they didn't change their name until about 2010, 2011. I mean, I was like, oh my goodness, what?
Yeah.
So, and the language back then was just that S word, R word. I'll just start with the letter. I won't say the whole name, but it was actually quite demoralising to hear that. And finding out that organisations, there was another organisation, Northcott. I think they were formerly known as, I think, the Crippled Children's Society of New South Wales.
Ah, okay, right. I didn't know that. Yeah.
So I've got friends who went there as well, and we sorted the disability community. I've actually reconnected with friends that I used to go to school with at Broderick, and also and at the time they were chairperson of Physical Council of New South Wales Disability, and they were the chairperson, and they got in touch with me. I said, "Do you still live at the same address?" Blah blah.
I'm still here.
I went, yeah, I'm still here. And then I found out that they're on the advisory committee at council CBCity. So that's how we reconnected. But we see each other all the time now, so it's good.
So, Julie, you did a submission. You put in a submission at the Royal Disability Commission. Yeah. So what came first? More your these roles you have in the advocacy space, or doing the submission, or did they both kind of come about at the same time? Or?
I think they both came about at the same time. If I remember correctly, I think I was just starting out doing advocacy, mentoring, facilitating work at that time, at that stage. I've only been in I came from mainstream to disability from mainstream to the disability sector. So that was quite difficult in itself, coming from that side into the disability side. So I think that opportunity came up. That was the advocacy, and also putting in a submission happened round about the same time.
What got the ball rolling? Was it you saw the call for submissions, or what was it that?
I had one of my peers used to work at the Royal Commission as well, and she used to read the stories that came out of that commission, and but I've always wanted to share my story. I just felt it was time for a big change to happen.
And would you say it was empowering for you to start writing these stories down, or was it a bit like re-traumatizing, or was it a bit of both?
Yeah, it was re-traumatizing, as I mentioned before. It was very re-traumatizing, but also it gave me the opportunity to start, sharing my story, wanting to write more about that side, because we shouldn't have to go through that. But then that's what actually gave me the self-confidence and determination to, share and advocate for people with disability. I'm only starting my advocacy journey, but there's a lot more to be done in that space.
And tell me about some of the work that you're doing at the moment, some of the committees you're on. And
so I'm on the Universal Access Advisory Committee. I've been on that committee for 2.5 years, and I'm on the Community and Inclusion Committee. So that the Community Inclusion one, that is about families and children, women, disability, cow communities, seniors, disability, all that sort of stuff.
Those are all really good.
The Universal Access Advisory Committee is more around about the disability inclusion action plan, us members getting involved in, say, for example, guest speaker at community events for CBCity and all that sort of stuff. But also more advocacy, but being more in the background of future mobility maps is another one that, and there's in the next disability inclusion action plan which is coming up.
And that's all for Canterbury Bankstown Council. Yeah,
I've worked on that. I've worked on the previous one. Yeah, and now the social justice charter working group.
Sorry, what's like some of your roles in these communities?
I'm just a member, but I'm also part of the social justice charter working group. So we've had our second meeting. So we're looking to co-author a new charter for City of Canterbury Bankstown.
And how important is it, like, on these committees to have the voice of a person with lived experience? I imagine that a few years ago you may have had workers around the table that were devising these grand plans for people with disability and not have had a person with disability actually have a voice around the table.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I used to see that happen a lot.
Did you?
And I still do.
Yeah, right.
I think it's very important that you have someone with lived experience on a committee in that space, because just say, for example, you wanted to do a charter or people with lived experience or a guest speaker role, or if you want to do a mobility map or something like that, and you need that lived experience from that person's aspect or opinions and stuff like that. So, yeah.
I'm a bit interested to know about whether, amongst all these stories of, I suppose, a bit of malice, is there any stories or moments that you've had where someone showed a bit of kindness or compassion towards you within Bankstown at all?
Yes, just, being able to share that story, but also when you say compassion, just getting around. I know people, friends of mine recently, when I was actually having these medical diagnosis, was actually quite draining for me, exhausting and draining for me, because it was like, oh, not this again. Why am I going through? I've been through so much, and it's just like, yeah. So I mean, that's when people have gotten around me and said, we're always here for you.
So having that support, network. Yeah,
I've got my own support network. Even this morning before this interview, they actually called me about half an hour before the interview. I said, probably, we should, get the all that sort of stuff. So it's important to have that supporting network around you. But
certainly sounds like it's brought you all closer together, which is quite heartwarming to see, right?
Yeah.
Under such distressing circumstances, obviously.
Yeah.
Do you think that's maybe had an impact on maybe how we view people who don't fit into traditional molds, not just within CBCity, but just in society in general?
Yeah, it's a really good question, James. That's really difficult. I know when I've had to explain if I'm filling in a form or something like that, and this is my third time to apply for the NDIS, believe it or not. And I've had this is 2.5 years or maybe even more than that, 8 years of advocating and people explaining, oh, you need this to fill in for, to get this, you would need to bring such and such, or identification, or I think the worst part is, James, is the more layers that you have. Say for me, I've got more than one disability now, which I'm fine with that. And then woman of colour. I'm from a cultural and linguistic diverse. I'm from a cowed background as well. And so once you've had layer upon layer upon layer, I find the discrimination is really quite difficult and draining towards you, because it's like, well, yes, I have a disability, but on top of that, I've also got this plus mental health issues.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite exhausting, because it's when you have these intersectionality, it could be you could tell one side of your story, but there's also another side of your story. So there's more than one part of there's always another piece to the puzzle.
Yeah.
You have a lot of strength and courage to be able to share that with us, and it's very admirable, the steps that you've taken for yourself.
Thank you.
A lot of this sounds like there's a large role in terms of being heard or others listening to you. Do you think there's like now a role of others listening in fostering a stronger connection, especially between, especially different cultural backgrounds, different disabilities, because everyone's got a different story to share, right? And I'm sure a lot of people would love to hear your story too.
Yeah, I definitely. When people listen, I think when my thing is that the important thing to know is that when you're listening to people with disability, or anyone who's from a cultural background, or intersectionality, don't just assume. You ask the question, because there's nothing worse than assuming. I've had people ask me, are you on the NDIS, for example? And I said, no. And they just look at me and went, oh, what? So, and they just assume, because I have a disability, more than one disability, that I'm on the NDIS. But it's actually, but when I answered them, when they asked me the question, and I said, no, I'm not on the NDIS, they went, oh.
Yeah.
So it's, in terms of listening, I think when you listen to people don't just assume that they already have that. Or, I mean, I would prefer people to ask me the question and first before they assume.
So asking the question of whether you're on NDIS is not the I suppose the confrontational part. It's the assumptions that come after it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yep.
So there's no harm in asking the questions first.
Yeah, there's no harm in asking the questions first. Yeah. I mean, I would prefer, as I said, I would prefer people asking me the questions first before they making up assumptions or perceptions or that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to turn a bit back now to your involvement within the community.
Yes.
Do you think there's like a role for like local events around Bankstown, different celebrations, or just even like spaces. Do you think there's a role for these to foster a sense of inclusion amongst different people with disabilities?
I think so.
Mm.
Yeah, most definitely. Especially with, I think we have a International Day of People with Disability event where I know previously I've been involved in a couple. I think the first one I was involved with was there was a video project. This was around about the time of COVID. So, and actually a work colleague of mine, and also who lives in the local government area of Canterbury Bankstown, he approached me to do a video project on what is inclusion. I said, oh yeah, because I wasn't heavily involved in council back a couple of years ago. I think it might have been about 4 or 5 years now. And they said, would you like to be involved in this project? And I said, yeah, why not? So I came and I was interviewed. I mean, it was only a 2 or 3 minute video, but it was a lot of fun. But wasn't just me. There was all different people with disability, and and we all were asked a question and that sort of thing. But it was the video itself went for about 1 to 2 minutes, but it was round about the time that we were still in COVID lockdown.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you feel like have you ever seen any direct impacts of your work on people with disability?
Yes, like for me and for other people. I know we've done a lot for people with disability to represent our community, but also there's still a lot to learn, but there's still a lot of work to be done in that space as well, to be fully inclusive. Because I find that what workplaces need to do is have more of a when they recruit, maybe have a recruitment drive for people with disability to work in that space or in their workplace.
Yeah.
To include them in all activities.
Yeah.
In meetings, it could be social gatherings, that type of thing. Or community events.
Would you say this all gives you a sense of purpose with everything that you've been through, and you've had some time to reflect on it too with the journaling, which is amazing. Would you say that that's sort of given you a new perspective on life?
Yes, definitely. When I actually did some reflection, been reflecting back probably about a week or 2 ago, and just having that reflection time and looking over what I've done in the past, but also the work I'm doing now with City of Canterbury Bankstown, but also with Diversity and Disability Alliance and other projects that I've been part of. I think that's given me more confidence, but also I feel like I feel empowered to do that and speak up.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm sure that you'll be able to inspire many more who may be in similar situations too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the important. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Julie, what steps do you think that we as a community can take to ensure that the future generations experience even deeper inclusion and social cohesion in Canterbury Bankstown?
I think what the council do very well is their community events and other projects that they do is excellent.
Mm-hmm.
I find that, but they're probably, for me anyway, there's probably a couple that that I would. That I've actually met a lot of doing the Have Your Say projects as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've met a lot of I've made a lot of friends throughout that experience in the last probably 6 to 12 months
Mm-hmm.
in different projects, but also meeting other people at from community organisations within Canterbury Bankstown with their Community Connect conference, social planning workshops during the year, that type of thing. And we've actually I've actually connected with, engaged and networked with other organisations
Mm-hmm.
through Diversity and Disability Alliance and other projects as well. So I think, yeah.
Okay, so thumbs up to Canterbury Bankstown Council
Yeah.
for the work they're doing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And what's one thing you'd like everyone in the community to know or understand about the importance of intersectionality and inclusion?
Inclusion. I'll start with intersectionality first. I think it's important that you include everyone, regardless of or marginalised groups, just coming together. No box ticking.
Mm-hmm.
Just being together, being person-centred approach rather than, disability,
Mm-hmm.
mental health,
Yeah.
coward background, seniors,
Mm-hmm.
families and children, women. I mean, just having that one service rather than separate.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how that can be done, but I think the box ticking is just a big no-no for me.
Yeah.
I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable. And it's sort of because every time I have to fill out something, are you this? Are you a person with disability? Are you female? This.
Yeah. So
I'm thinking, hang on a second, we should be more people-centred, person-centred approach, humanised approach, rather than, yes, I'm a human being. I'm all these things.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, it does really put us all into different boxes, right? Even if we identify as those certain things, it really does, still segregate us in terms of our identity.
Yeah.
And like you said, end of the day, we're all just human beings, right? And we should all be treated as such. Yeah.
Yeah.
And individuals.
Individuals. And that's also including our LGBTQIA plus community as well.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing we've touched on before, Julie, which we haven't covered, but I did want to mention, was we as a community of Canterbury Bankstown, whether we work, live, play in this community, we know that there's a bit of a stigma. There can be a bit of a stigma with Canterbury Bankstown, particularly in COVID times, even before that actually. Did you want to talk a bit about that as well?
Yes, I do. I will touch on that. Yes. I also shared my story with the DRC, Disability Royal Commission in particular, that when we were in lockdown for 6 months, back in 2021, I think. And that was, and actually I didn't know that I had depression and anxiety at the time. That was before my diagnosis. I found that was very isolating back then, because but it was also, I will say this, there are times when if people outside the LGA, they would ask me, as soon as I would say a question being asked thrown at me by a service provider, if I had to fill in a form, whereabouts do you live? Now, as soon as I say Bankstown, their response would be, oh.
Yeah,
and
right.
then the questions they would ask me following I say that would be, oh, is it safe to live there?
Right.
Yeah.
They would ask you that.
They'll ask me that, and I was also asked, is it safe to walk down the street by my own family member?
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, are you serious?
What's their sort of like emotion when they ask these questions? Are they rather concerned or rather taking it in a more humorous sort of tone?
I think it was more humorous. I mean, it's got to it's at that stage. As soon as we went into lockdown, I just felt, well, and there's nothing. I don't have. I respect everyone outside our LGA. I get that. I totally get it. But when it comes to stigmatized, when you're being stigmatized all the time, as soon as when people ask me you're from Southwest Sydney, in particular, city of Canterbury or Bankstown, and then it's immediate. There's this stigma that is attached to that as well. It's the COVID times. I think, Anna, we touched on just before our interview. I did say that being on the other side of Sydney was quite difficult because you had people walking around the beach with no mask on, lying on the beach, and there were photos. I remember seeing images in the paper. I found that really distressing. Yeah, because we were locked up, not locked up in our houses, but I do recall that we had helicopters hovering, police and defence force handing out food boxes, I think it was, or something like that. But it was I do, in some of the community, in maybe reading about this stuff later, it was even some of our community on the Canterbury side of the council, even they found it quite distressing because we're sort of questioning, oh, what have we done? And it's like we haven't done anything. We're just part of the community. I still remember the Premier saying, "We're all in this together." That was the catchphrase. They used to say that all the time. Yeah, but it was sort of quite distressing.
Because it felt like it wasn't one Sydney. It was divided.
It was divided, and that's what I felt. And sometimes it is getting better, but there's still that division.
But it's so important for you to put in that experience into the Royal Commission about a person with disability, living through those lockdowns and what was going on at the time.
Yeah, it was actually quite isolating because, as I said, I didn't realise it at the time, but it was distressing as well, just watching people walking down the beach, lying on the beach without a mask on, and there is COVID still around, and even to this day, the person, I should say this, but the person who was driving the taxis around the eastern suburbs is from a Arabic-speaking background.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm thinking, are you doing there?
But people from outside of Sydney
Yeah.
working in parts of southwest Sydney and in Canterbury Bankstown needed a permission to enter the area.
Yeah, I remember at one point when I saw, might have been on Q&A, for example, the former mayor, Carl Asfor, was, and Linda Burney had to sign a form to leave the area.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds a bit like the Hunger Games, like with the Capital District and all the districts everywhere around Sydney.
Yeah.
So, Julie, you've lived in Canterbury Bankstown for all of your life. Tell us some strengths about this community and about this area. What do you like living? What do you like about living in this area?
Probably this strength, I guess, where we can be ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's a strength, but also getting together in the community.
From the perspective of a person with disability, if you could inspire one change in Canterbury Bankstown to improve social cohesion, what would it be?
More around education.
Mm-hmm.
Be an educator, also mentor for people change of disability, but that also includes language, terminology, probably questions to ask, listen. If sometimes there could be, when we attend meet, could be one change could be accessibility requirements in documentations as well, and making it more simple, not being so the language so full of jargon, and just simple, easy English.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julie. Thank
You're
you very
welcome.
much for your time.
Thank you very much for
and
having me today.
Yeah, sharing your story and all the great work that you're doing out in the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
To check out more episodes of Voices of CBCity, more information, or our disclaimers, check out our website, cb.city/Voices of CBCity. The Voices of CBCity podcast is hosted by James Brown and Anna Sotoma, produced by Renee Trainer and edited by the City of Canterbury Bankstown. This project is funded by the New South Wales Government through the New South Wales Social Cohesion Grants for Local Government and led by the City of Canterbury Bankstown.
To finish our Voices of CBCity today, we'll be featuring a different kind of voice of CBCity, students in the Respect program. The Respect program is facilitated by local community youth arts organisation based in Bankstown named Out Loud. Respect is a music program for boys under 12 years old, teaching them about domestic violence and gender equality with a view to prevent and reduce domestic violence in the future. Over 12 weeks, the boys write, record and perform an original song and also become active agents of social change and role models in their schools. There are some amazing songs that you can check out on Out Loud's YouTube channel, but for today, we hope you enjoy Stop and Think About What You Say by students from Punchbowl Public School.
Which path do you wanna take? Treat girls in an equal way. Controlling is not okay. Stop and think about what you say. Girls out here are feeling defeated. Men out here make our women feel depleted. No respect can lead to concern. Let's teach these kids so they can learn. Fantasies key in our relationship. Be a role model, show leadership. Treat women equal for a better future. Be an inspiration, not an abuser. A positive relationship can be fire. Quality is what we all desire. Emotional abuse can leave you scarred. Treating women equally isn't hard. If a man doesn't want to treat a woman right, leave the abuse out of your life. Physical abuse, please don't fight. Women deserve equal rights. Which path do you want to take? Treat girls in an equal way. Controlling is not okay. Stop and think about what you say.
Show good behaviour to the younger kids. Women should feel safe in their cribs. Instead of showing violence, show your love. Treat your partner like a dove. The more you hurt her, the more she'll cry. The more you love her, the more she'll fly. It's important they always care about her. It's a life of love, not a life of hurt.
A healthy relationship shows that you care. You need to show love and always be fair. You should always respect your wife if you want to have a good life.
We should treat women with fairness. Punchbowl is here to spread awareness. Be brave, speak about what you see. Man, you don't need to disagree.
When you control girls that have no choice, girls will be scared and have no voice. When you see abuse, scream out loud. Tell them to stop. Stand up proud.
Which path do you wanna take? Treat girls in an equal way. Controlling is not okay. Stop and think about what you say. Which path do you wanna take? Treat girls in an equal way. Controlling is not okay. Stop and think about what you say.
Hi, I'm Mustafa,
And I'm Noah.
and we are both in year 6 at Punchbowl Public School.
This year we did the Respect program at our school, which is run by Out Loud.
Out Loud is a community organisation that runs programs for young people, addressing social issues using arts and performance.
Each week in the Respect program we learn all about domestic violence and the importance of healthy relationships.
Then we all work together to write this song called Stop and Think About What You Say.
We believe that it is important for boys and men to stop and think about what they say, especially when making jokes about women and girls. It is important to treat all girls equally, especially with our words.
We hope you enjoyed our song.
Which path do you wanna take? Treat girls in an equal way.